I still remember the night my parents spent $12,000 on my sister's birthday like it was nothing. 12,000. The number echoed in my head as I stood in the doorway, watching strangers carry in boxes wrapped in gold ribbon and glossy paper. The house smelled like fresh flowers and expensive perfume, a mix so strong it made my chest feel tight. Outside, a giant banner with my sister's name shimmered under soft lights, like she was some kind of celebrity. Inside, everything revolved around her, careful with that. My mom called out, rushing past me without even making eye contact. "Those decorations cost more than your father's first car." She laughed lightly, like it was a joke, but it wasn't. I shifted to the side, letting another group of workers pass. No one asked me to help. No one told me where to stand. I was just there, like a piece of furniture no one noticed anymore. "Hey." My dad's voice suddenly cut through the noise. For a split second, I thought he was talking to me, but then he walked right past. "Make sure the cake stays in the fridge," he told one of the staff members. "It's custom made." Of course it was. Everything about tonight was custom made, everything except me. By evening, the house had transformed into something unreal. Lights hung from every corner, glowing warm and soft. A live band was setting up near the garden. Tables were lined with food I couldn't even name. And in the center of it all, my sister. She walked down the stairs like she owned the world, wearing a sparkling dress that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. People turned instantly, phones came out, compliments filled the air. "She looks stunning, like a princess. Your daughter is amazing." My parents beamed with pride, standing beside her like they had just created something perfect. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching it all unfold. No one looked for me, no one noticed me, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. "Why are you just standing there?" I didn't even have to turn to know it was my mom. "Go help your sister," she said sharply. "It's her special day." I almost smiled. Her special day, it always was. Every year, every moment, every achievement, it was always about her. I remembered my own birthdays, quiet dinners, simple cakes, sometimes even forgotten plans. "Do you need anything?" I had asked once years ago. "No," my mom had said distractedly, "don't make things complicated." But tonight, nothing was too complicated for my sister. As the party grew louder, I slipped outside for some air. The music followed me, bass thumping through the walls. I sat on the edge of the garden, staring at the lights strung across the fence. I tried to understand. Was it jealousy? Maybe, or maybe it was something deeper, something heavier. Because it wasn't just about the money. It wasn't about the decorations or the cake or the guests. It was about what all of it meant. It meant she mattered more. "Hey." I looked up to see my sister walking toward me, her heels clicking against the stone path. "There you are," she said, slightly annoyed. "Why aren't you inside? People are asking where you are." I raised an eyebrow. "Are they?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she crossed her arms. "You could at least try to act happy for me." I stared at her for a moment. "I am," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "You don't look like it." And just like that, she turned and walked away, her dress catching the light with every step. Perfect, untouchable, loved. Later that night, my dad tapped his glass, calling for attention. "I just want to say how proud we are of our daughter," he announced, his voice full of emotion. "She deserves everything we've given her, and more." Applause filled the room. My sister smiled, glowing under the lights. I stood at the back, clapping slowly, my hands cold. Because in that moment, I realized something I had been avoiding for years. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't something that would change. This was who we were, a family where one child was everything and the other was nothing. When the party finally ended, the house was quiet again, empty glasses, wrapping paper on the floor. Fading music. I stood in the middle of it all, looking around. $12,000 for one night. For one person, I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. And right then, in that silence, I made a decision. I wouldn't stay invisible anymore. I left home on a quiet morning. No arguments, no dramatic goodbye. Just a small suitcase, a few folded clothes, and the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. My mom stood in the kitchen, stirring her tea like it was any other day. My dad skimmed through his phone, barely glancing up. "You're really going?" he asked, not looking at me. "Yes." A pause. "All right," he said simply, like I had told him I was going to the store. That was it. No, be careful. No, we'll miss you. Not even a question about where I'd stay. I waited, just for a second, hoping someone would stop me. No one did, so I walked out. The world outside didn't welcome me with open arms. It was cold, unpredictable, and brutally honest. Rent didn't wait. Bills didn't care about feelings, and hunger didn't care that I had spent years being overlooked. It demanded attention immediately. My first apartment was barely more than a room. The paint peeled off the walls, and the window rattled whenever the wind got too strong. At night, the sounds of traffic and distant voices made it hard to sleep. But it was mine. Every crack, every inconvenience, every struggle, it belonged to me. And somehow that made it better. I worked wherever I could. Morning shifts at a small cafe, evening shifts stacking shelves at a grocery store. Some days I barely had time to sit down. My hands grew rough, my body tired, but my mind started to change. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for approval. I wasn't competing for attention. I wasn't invisible. Because out here, effort mattered. If I worked, I earned. If I saved, I grew. Simple, fair, real. Meanwhile, my sister's life stayed exactly the same. At least that's what it looked like. Every time I opened social media, there she was smiling in expensive restaurants, posing with new outfits, surrounded by people who looked just as polished and perfect as she did. Living my best life dizzy, one caption read. I stared at the screen for a moment before locking my phone. Of course she was. She had never known anything else. We didn't talk much. Sometimes my mom would call, but it was always brief. "Are you okay?" she'd ask. "Yes." "Good." And that would be the end of it. No deeper questions, no real interest. Just enough to say they tried. My sister didn't call at all, not once, and honestly, I stopped expecting her to. Months passed, then a year. Slowly, things began to change. I got a better job, nothing glamorous, but stable. Enough to move into a slightly better place. Enough to breathe without constantly worrying about the next bill. I bought my own furniture, piece by piece, a second-hand table, a small couch, a lamp that flickered sometimes but still worked. Each item felt like a victory, not because it was perfect, but because I earned it. One evening, after a long shift, I sat on my couch, staring at the quiet room around me. No noise, no expectations, no comparisons, just peace, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the same way. The sharp, painful kind of anger had faded into something quieter, something more distant. Understanding, not forgiveness, not yet, but clarity. I finally understood why things had always been the way they were. My parents hadn't just favored my sister. They had built her world for her, protected her from discomfort, shielded her from consequences, and in doing so, they had never given her a reason to grow, while I had been left to figure everything out alone. At the time, it felt like neglect, like rejection, like proof that I wasn't enough, but now it looked different. Because every struggle I faced had forced me to become stronger. Every moment of being overlooked had pushed me to stand on my own. That realization didn't erase the pain, but it changed it. It turned it into something useful, something steady. Still, there were nights when the past crept back in. Moments when I remembered the laughter from that party, the way my parents looked at her like she was their entire world. Moments when I wondered what it would feel like to be chosen like that. Just once, I shook the thought away. Because deep down, I knew something now that I hadn't known before. Their version of love had conditions. Mine didn't need them anymore. I leaned back against the couch, exhaling slowly. Outside, the city moved on, loud and restless. Inside, everything was still. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone to notice me. I already had, and that was enough for now. It was 2:03 a.m. when my phone started ringing. I was half asleep, tangled in a thin blanket, the soft hum of the ceiling fan filling the room, For a moment, I ignored it. Calls at that hour never meant anything good. But then I saw the name, my sister. I stared at the screen, my mind slow and heavy with sleep. She never called, not during the day, not on holidays, never. So why now? The phone kept ringing. Something in my chest tightened. I picked up. What? I muttered, my voice rough. At first, there was nothing but noise, uneven breathing, a muffled sound like she was trying to speak but couldn't. Then, why didn't you tell me? I flinched, pulling the phone slightly away from my ear. Tell you what? I said, sitting up. Her voice broke, shifting from anger to panic in seconds. Everything, all of it. My life is, she choked, it's falling apart. I blinked, trying to process her words. Falling apart, her life, that didn't make sense. I don't understand, I said slowly. What are you talking about? She let out a shaky breath. I'm in debt, she whispered, like saying it out loud made it real. I owe money, more than I can pay back. My friends, her voice cracked, they're gone. None of them are answering me anymore. I stayed quiet. Each word felt strange, like it belonged to someone else's story. Not hers, never hers. And Mom and Dad, she continued, her voice rising again, sharp with disbelief. They cut me off, just like that. They said I need to learn responsibility. Can you believe that? I could. Perfectly. The silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing, uneven and desperate, like she was waiting for me to fix it. To say something that would make everything go back to normal. You have to help me, she said suddenly. There it was. The expectation, familiar, predictable. You have a job now, right? She rushed on. You've been working all this time, just lend me some money. I'll pay you back later, I promise. I leaned back against the wall, staring into the darkness. Images flashed through my mind, late nights at work, skipped meals, the exhaustion, the loneliness. All the things she had never seen. All the things she had never needed to. How much? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Then, almost too quickly, she said, just a few thousand for now, a few thousand. The words hung in the air, heavy and absurd. I let out a slow breath. No. Silence. Complete, stunned silence. Oh, what? She whispered. I said no. The shift was instant. Her panic turned into something sharper, something defensive. What do you mean, no? She snapped. I'm your sister. I closed my eyes briefly. I know. Then act like it, she shouted. You're supposed to help me. That's what family does. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is it? I asked. Yes, because I don't remember that. She went quiet again, confused, off balance. Good, for the first time in her life, she didn't have control over the situation. You had everything. I continued, my voice steady. Every opportunity, every advantage, and I had to figure things out on my own. That's not my fault. No, I agreed. It's not, and it wasn't. That was the part that made it harder. But it doesn't make it my responsibility either, I added. Her breathing grew louder, more frantic. You're being selfish, she said, her voice trembling now, not with anger, but something closer to fear. Maybe she was realizing something. Maybe for the first time there was no safety net. No, I said softly. I'm being honest. Another long pause. Then, quieter this time, she asked, so that's it. You're just going to let me struggle. I looked around my small apartment, the worn couch, the dim light, the life I had built piece by piece. I didn't have a choice, I said. I struggled because I had to. That's different. It's not. Her voice cracked again. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted, barely above a whisper, and there it was, not the anger. Not the entitlement, just fear, real, raw fear. For a second, something inside me softened, but not enough. Because I knew this moment mattered, not just for me, for her too. You'll figure it out, I said. How? She cried. The same way I did. She didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I thought you'd help me. I swallowed. I did, I said quietly. She frowned. I could hear it in her silence. When she asked, right now, she didn't understand. Not yet. Maybe she wouldn't for a long time, but that was okay, because some lessons couldn't be explained. They had to be lived. I can't do this, she whispered. Yes, you can. And for the first time, I actually believed that. The call ended a few minutes later. No yelling, no dramatic good. Bye. Just a quiet disconnection. I sat there for a while, phone still in my hand, staring into the dark. I expected to feel guilty, to second guess myself, to wonder if I had been too harsh. But instead, I felt something else. Something unfamiliar, something steady relief, because for the first time in my life, I hadn't bent. I hadn't sacrificed myself to keep someone else comfortable. I had chosen myself, and even though it hurt, even though a small part of me still cared, I knew one thing for certain. This was the moment everything changed. The days after the call felt different, not dramatic, not heavy, just quieter, like something that had been pulling at me for years had finally let go. I went back to work the next morning, the same routine, the same responsibilities, but my mind wasn't tangled anymore. There was no replaying the conversation, no guilt creeping in through the cracks, just a calm, steady certainty. I had done the right thing. A week passed before my phone rang again. This time it was my mom. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "Hello?" Her voice was softer than usual, careful, measured. "She's not doing well," she said. I leaned against the kitchen counter, already knowing who she meant. I figured. There was a pause, like she was choosing her next words very carefully. She's stressed. She's never handled things like this before. I almost said I know. But I stayed quiet. She told me about your conversation, and my mom continued. You could have been a little kinder. I let out a slow breath. I wasn't cruel. No, but you didn't help her either. And there it was again, that expectation, that quiet assumption that I should give just because I could. I did help her, I said calmly. How? She asked, confusion slipping into her voice. By not fixing it for her. Silence. A long one. I could almost hear her struggling to understand. That's not how family works, she said finally. I closed my eyes for a moment. Maybe that's the problem, I replied. Another pause, this one heavier. More uncomfortable. You've changed, she said. I opened my eyes, staring out the small window beside me. Yes, I said simply, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to explain it. A few days later, I saw my sister again. Not at a party, not surrounded by people, just alone. She was sitting at a small cafe near my workplace, her posture slouched, her usual confidence replaced by something quieter. When she looked up and saw me, there was no dramatic reaction, just a hesitant nod. I walked over. Hey, she replied softly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked different, not in a physical way. She was still dressed well, still put together. But something had shifted behind her eyes. Reality had reached her, finally. I've been trying to fix things, she said after a while. I pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. How's that going? She let out a small, humorless laugh. Hard? I nodded. Yeah, it is. Another silence. But this one wasn't tense. It wasn't filled with expectations or unspoken resentment. It was just honest. I didn't understand before, she admitted, staring down at her hands, what it was like for you. I watched her carefully. There was no defensiveness in her voice, no entitlement, just truth. I know, I said, and I did, because how could she have understood? She had never been forced to. I thought everything would always just work out. She continued, that someone would fix it, that I'd never actually have to deal with consequences. I didn't interrupt. She needed to say it. I was wrong. The words settled between us, simple, heavy. Real, I'm not asking you for money, she added quickly, glancing up at me. I wanted to say that. I nodded slowly. Okay. For the first time, she didn't try to take anything from me. Not my time, not my energy, not my stability. And strangely enough, that made it easier to sit there with her. You're stronger than I thought, she said after a moment. I almost smiled. I had to be. She swallowed, nodding like she finally understood what that meant. We didn't talk much after that. No big emotional reunion. No sudden transformation. Just a quiet conversation between two people who were finally seeing each other clearly. When I stood up to leave, she looked at me. Do you think I'll be okay? She asked. I paused. Then I said the same thing I had told her that night. Yes. Outside, the air felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because it didn't need to be. As I walked away, I realized something. This moment was the revenge I never knew I needed. Not anger. Not punishment, not watching her fall apart, but watching her finally stand on her own. because for years I had been the one left behind. The one overlooked, the one forced to grow without help, and now I was the one who had something she didn't. Peace. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to compete. I didn't need to prove anything. And for the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. The opposite of being invisible isn't being seen by others. It's seeing yourself.